what happened?
Yeah.
Somebody wants to tell?
So what happened?
On the Open Doors of Erg in 2013, blonde, only small woman, young woman came. I don't remember exactly her name. Mathilde, yeah. And she came to me and she said, "Yeah, I heard that you were talking about running or getting a place into an occupation, and actually we have that because we already talked about that with Alexander and some others. I don't remember if you were in the...
I don't know.
Okay. We did talk about that, and
Yeah.
we probably talked about it also with the other person who was there at this moment. And so she came to me when I was drawing, these little drawings on the big table. And yes, and I said, yes, you should be talking with Alexander. He's the teacher of this. Can you speak English? And we got to get in contact with her.
Yeah, it's true, because we were searching for some additional place to. It was connected also with the research of the department at the time.
And there was already at this time the threat that we should be getting out. I mean, that we should be kicked off by the Saint-Luc from this building.
Yeah, because we have to explain maybe that there was this moment of, yes, we were in our little house.
But from this building we should have been kicked off.
The temperature also is suitable.
So we were in this little house, and it was a bit, per se, it was, the animation department through this house was kind of a bit inside, outside Erg. We had this kind of place where we worked. And I think that was also one of the impulses in the beginning, to think about, okay, could there be something that is even in a different way outside and still parallel as a work of a group.
We also had some problems of space because the rooms were very small and we were a lot of students.
Yeah.
And there was a very pragmatic problem, which actually is interesting. I think that there were these institutional rules, like saying, okay, we have to close the door at a certain point of day, because otherwise we get problems with the neighbors, because this was not acceptable. Basically, within a school institution, that you would extend certain hours, that we would have dinners as part of the working practice, for example. And I mean, they were not particularly loud. I mean, they were not orgies. It was a kind of normal situation, but still it was
problematic in the neighborhood.
And so there was a kind of force now to say, okay, stay within the institutional rules. So we understood that even within this kind of a bit outside thing, it was this framework that put it back into the school, and so we were actually searching for a place that would allow to suspend this.
And how I'm interested in this, how the practical reason, or no reason, how do you call it? Practical situation is making us thought, or was it this, or was it something more? I mean, should we be finding a source of this movement, or?
I don't know. I mean, it was. I mean, for me, I don't know, but we had a lot of discussions about this in the beginning. It was for me the moment to start there, and so and for many of you, actually for all of you, not for you, but for everybody else. And in fact, I think it was very clear to all of us that the certain, let's say, if we would break down what we see is the productivity of this environment of a school, it's kind of sharing a space, no? It's sharing a space of research, in fact. And that includes the students of different levels, the teacher, everybody, in fact. And so in this, I mean, the thing that follows out of this is, I think, very clearly a question of space, de facto, beside the space in a more broad definition, the space that is this kind of environment in which you can share practices.
Yeah.
And it's connected with rules, but it's also connected with the concreteness of an architecture.
Yeah, and the main point of the animation department, the main difference that we can have in this building is that we can build the space where we can learn, when we can exchange, when we can reunion for exchange. And the fact that we build this space by ourselves make a huge difference between other spaces when we cannot inhabit the space and we cannot access it all times.
Mm-hmm.
And we developed a kind of strategy with the keys to be able to come and work whenever we want.
Mm-hmm.
And that make a big difference also, that we want to displace this system of pedagogy in another place where we can continue this, because it will be not possible by the end of summer.
I forgot now what I wanted to say. No, I don't know. Lise came also at this moment after the first year. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, I invited Elise because it was interesting because she was doing a research on artistic practice and pedagogy, in a more complex sense than just teaching art, so to speak. And she was like, she was doing it in Paris in a frame of a program there. And she herself, she's filmmaker, and I know her from the past as a filmmaker, basically, from working together. And then I learned that she was doing this research, and I invited her to come, and she was very interested in this question of the space, for example, the strategies with the keys and so on that we invented. I remember we had long discussions about this fact of in how far let's say the crossing point between fields of artistic practice and the form of pedagogy can be primarily actually a kind of spatial definition.
And what I wanted to say that I really don't know. It's the fact that we always had this kind of moment in February, March, where we are showing. We did shows the project in the animation department, where for example Cecilia did her onions on your things.
Yeah, it was my performance.
Yeah, and so. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, but at this moment, this proposal was all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't had a fixed point, and we used also the room of animation, but we also
extended to the city.
Yeah, but we didn't choose to keep at Erg. No, did we had any performance there?
There was some performances in art, but the idea was really to handle any space that we would enter in the very sort of materiality or structure of this space, in like you would access an archive or something like this, and to use the work in fact to gain a specific kind of access to a space, which were all these different spaces, and the condition to do it also in the school was to handle the school in the same way as you would handle a cafe or a public space in the city. That was the kind of rule, and it's true. It's quite interesting that there was this moment of the spreading in the city, and this kind of counterweight of the department building itself. And in a way, maybe this action to search for this possibility of the occupation was really the kind of crossing point between these two needs. And in the beginning, it was really a very pragmatic need. And then later, it became maybe also something more like an experiment on how to work in a different context. But then,
because through this perspective, also we can also say that in a way, as erg or as animation rooms or something else, everything was at the same level for us. I mean, we were totally engaged into this. So we did, we were acting. I mean, we were active in this research and in this. That's something that was popping up. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, of course, it was a proposition, but also it was really at one point it was also a necessity, you know, to really to basically create this kind of space together. And then I think that was interesting that at one point also we noticed that there was certain functions that would be given to a person, like for example you are a bachelor student and I'm a professor, like these kind of functions, they would even survive to a certain degree this kind of this radical sense of collaboration, let's say. You know? And then I think that I remember we had this long discussion on this, and then there was this moment when we said, okay, but then maybe we need a parallel structure that is kind of coexisting and that defines the group, the same group in another way, as a parallel act, basically.
Yeah, we begin in February of the first year to engage this centrifuge movement around the department and the animation department from the ERG, and to extend it to other places in the street, and then to reach new spaces in Uccle.
Yeah.
Where this movement begin to grow in next year February to make another festival. In parallel of the structure. It was not the structure of the ERG at all. It was kind of an element not attached, but really that grows up by himself in another structure, in another association.
Exactly, and it was not even, I mean, it were artists who found this thing, who occupied, but at the same time it was not just a studio project or something, it was also a living, it came through you, no? I think the contact in the beginning came through.
I know by a friend, Mathilde, and I knew that she were looking for people that made leave this place, because they just came in and occupied the house beside the next to the space, the school space, and they were looking for people that were interested in proposing project for this space. I think they were too very open. They didn't have. This is also interesting. They were not looking for like one kind of project, or that people were trying to build something together in one view. And this is it's very far from the studio view. It was really like, okay, let's live this place with different activities, and this was also necessary for them, because the possibility for them to stay there, it was thanks to these activities, because the owner and also the quartier of Uccle was okay to let them live there if there was kind of activities that make the place something community. And
it was interesting because I remember that also the question of one of the reasons why it was also attractive for them was also the collaboration with an institution, in fact, and we were exactly searching to kind of leave the institution. So it was kind of funny that in one, that was not the only reason, and we had good discussion, but I remember that in the beginning it was for all parties, it was not entirely easy to understand this relation, also in terms of possible financial support or whatever. It was a bit like a kind of unclear situation, but also because we were still in the process of defining our own position, like this, what I said, like this division between the same group being a department in a school, the animation department on the other side, this very same group becoming something else, whatever, It was not so easy, I think. Also, and I remember some of the first meetings were a bit like, okay, what is this position?
And what position we could take in this new place.
Also.
But what I like in this new space was there was a main corridor in the middle, and on both sides there is rooms and different rooms with different activities, and we have a little space here, and here the kitchen. And it makes this corridor the kind of meeting point where all the practice could meet together. And that's this space in the middle was not functional, so there is not any preview or pre-function in this space. So it allows also to involve ourselves and to build projects and activities in this space. That
in fact, our meeting point was most of the time like here. No, we had a lot of sofas and stuff. In the room, and there was this bar here thing. No? So in fact, I remember that we had, and it was interesting. Also, always a question when we did meetings that were really related to the school. I remember we did one thing with Jacques Graphique about production issues.
How to survive after
How to
school.
survive, to say it like this. Like it was not so easy at this time always to decide, is this something that sort of makes sense? And then often it was just a pragmatic decision also to say, okay, we had more space there and stuff like this. But then how is the exact mixture that you search for? You know?
Yeah, even the content was a bit away from the institutional structure, but from the act that it not proposed this kind of advice that we developed in this structure outside. So.
Yeah, and we also, we didn't want to. One possible result of this move could also be that suddenly the old department gets much more classical school space, because suddenly you are only doing the classical school activities you are doing there, and everything else happens there. But I think that was really also not the goal. No? We still try to do a lot of things that would be also beyond this normal framework of the classes or something like this in the old department.
Yeah, in both of the space.
And I remember this space was also actually very interesting. It was a very interesting space as such, with these kind of doors that you could kind of open and close. And
it was a kind of storage in between storage and the projection room.
It was rather big, and we could use it we used it for some workshops also. I remember. And then there was this beautiful space like outside here, with a tree and the strange sheeps like everywhere. The funny thing is, I remember when I first came to Uccle, there was really this kind of impression of sheeps and chicken running around.
I think the middle of the city.
It was also interesting in a way because it was really not the cliché of okay, let's do an occupation as a department. It was really a bit like this kind of agricultural spot in the middle of nowhere, especially because I didn't come from Brussels. For me, it was really like a little shock to surprise.
For me too, yes. Also because of the Uccle quartier around, it's really.
Poshy.
It's really a strange place to do this kind of thing. And it was, it kept being a bit of a problem that it was a bit off, of course. We have to also follow. It worked really in the moments, like we will probably have talked later about the festival and these moments. I think it really worked, but then it was a bit complicated also because of the distance sometimes in terms of the sort of daily use. Still there were people who were very regularly using it, but it was not always easy to connect, especially in a city like Brussels, where I think people are just not used to very far this kind of distance in Berlin would be very close, but in Brussels it seems quite far. So yes, but then we entered the space, and I remember part of the thing was that we did our sort of dinners and these things there. The first thing I think was the end dinner of the previous year and the starting dinner of the next year that we did there. And then
it was a kind of discovery of the place and see what we can do with this space. And that was just before I think that was at this moment we decided to we have a room, they give us a room just there, and that was at this moment we decided to have a little construction of the room, put a wall here and in the middle also.
Yes.
There is two little rooms, and a bigger one.
And beyond the functionality of it, there was something about really touching the space. No, it was like okay, we sort of appropriate the space.
Yeah, and on two levels, like we are acting inside the space at the construction level of the space, like the walls, dim walls, etc. Like at the same time, like it would not be a living space if we don't put energy inside it. So doing something to keep alive, in fact.
Yeah, it's like a form of settlement or inhabiting.
Yes. And somehow this was what was missing in the department also, this really structure really of the house, of the little house, which was very also interesting for us, but the possibility to build and to modify the space was also something that was really close to this new or different way to organize our group.
Yeah, that was interesting. That it was something that I think was very interlinked, or the sort of work on the group as a structure, like as a shared practice, and on the other side on the space, it was really something that sort of reflected on each other. And I think for me that one really important point was, and this became only clear really within this project, and then I think amplified even a bit when we did the Tirana trip and the year after. There was this kind of thing that of misuse of a space, or a kind of, I mean, first a kind of coexisting of different spaces within one space. I mean, here a former school that gets an occupation and gets kind of occupied by a parallel structure of a school again, and then you kind of start to transform this thing, and you use the fact that there's a kind of intrinsic heterogeneity in the structure of the space. No? It's something not one-dimensional per se, and I think this engages, or that helps to misuse the space also, to not just function within the logic of.
Yeah, and it was also good. I mean. That there was no scheduling or organization really strict in the occupation of the space. It was like the people that were interested in make it live and go there and build, and sometimes you put something and then the time when we come again it was disappear, or it was displaced. It was in continuous changement without really a decision by the sometimes there were like mails that were circulating, but very without hierarchy or a little small group that were saying, okay, let's do that, we're gonna do it, and okay, the other, if you want to join and participate.
Yeah, but at the same time, to me, it's like very various little decisions that are not talked. Like it seems like everything was a kind of decision. In fact, like okay, we put the walls, and then it was a decision, but not really common decision. Like
you found trace of what the other did, and you understand, okay, maybe we can do this, but but you never really said, okay, let's change the color of the building.
It's a very interesting point. Is what is common in this sense? Like, is common a kind of decision that you take together, or is common also the kind of crossing of different actions in one space? You know, it's a very interesting question actually.
And what is my point? I mean, with this, reason is not always the tool that we are using for common energy to be activated. And I have to say that it's really interesting also not using only the reason, so discourses or talking or stuff like that. And I have to say that we should be concluding for around now. No.
I didn't check the time actually.
It's just 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Yeah, maybe it's good to speak a bit about the festival still, no? Because there was some, I mean, it's not so important maybe to understand the whole context, but I think it's interesting still that there was a moment where some of these reflections and some of these works sort of crystallized in a moment, no? In a shared moment. There were also invited many other people, where there was concerts and stuff. I don't know. Maybe have some of the gestures. Just mess around a little bit. There were a lot of kind of performances, but I think many of the actions actually were linked also with the. I mean, they had their reason in themselves, but they were also kind of linked to the experience of this occupation, of this act to go there. In fact, and I mean, for me also, what was interesting in this whole thing, and I think what was the relation. I mean, obviously we are dealing with a very sort of specific, but also not very, I mean, a kind of enlarged notion of animation in the department. And for me, this whole social action, let's say, or this spatial action of the occupation, the way we work there together, there was really something almost like a collective project of animation happening. I mean, in the sense of the heterogeneity of the spaces that were layered, the way people would interact, you know.
Yeah, and there is one sculpture. It's just there. There is one sculpture in this main corridor of the corridor of friction. There is this sculpture made by someone we invited from the outside, from Nantes. It was Vasily, and he proposed to build a sculpture together, bit by bit, and try to adapt with what we construct before. And each people could involve themselves at one point of the sculpture in time. It was constructing all over the 3 or 4 days of the festival. And it was, I think, a good metaphor of what's happening in this space, in this old space, and in the animation department also.
It was interesting because at the end it was extremely fragile. I remember it was almost really breaking down.
Yeah, when it breaks down, it makes another things, and someone intervene after it. It builds something else.
I think I don't know. There was something about this way of how this action, by this simple form of displacement and confrontation of different spaces in one, I think something that it enabled was really a kind of different way of commonness in this sense. You know, in a this, yeah.
If there's this like action by actions, individual actions by individual actions, you reach a point of commonness.
Yeah, but not by taking the point of view of each person that participate to that, but just by adapt yourself to the structure when you arrived. And you can modify it. You can transform it also. But that's a border of appropriation. You're still in this border. You never appropriate the thing because it's always in movement.
I did listen at this moment. I think about this history of emancipation, but Sloterdijk. It came in Brussels this moment, and he got this conference, and I attended to that, and it was kind of interesting. And I had to say that talking from the situated point, to be active in a student place, layering all these structures, and finding through this the system or the structure is maybe the common movement that we decided together to, taking one element, one the other.
And it's interesting because it's a very, I mean, you could frame this really as a kind of pedagogical or political utopian gesture also a bit, but in a way it's a very simple action also. You know, it's at the end we can.
Shall I start it again?
I don't know.
No?
We're in the middle of it.
It was interesting. I wanted to do it very quickly.
We can have a funny break in the video. Did you start again?
No, I don't.
Okay. No, but I don't. I don't remember actually. But I think I just thought for me it was interesting that it's not. I mean, it's a kind of utopian concept or gesture, but it's an utopian gesture that comes out of a very simple gesture, in fact, or a very simple fact of displacement. And I think that's something for me is interesting to reflect on as a conceptual strategy or pedagogical strategy.
But as you're talking about displacement, you're talking from a point of a situated point of view that is displacement from a special way. From a special way to do things or for a special system. But actually, if you don't know these systems, for example, with new students or newcomers that can come after that, how this displacement still can continue, or how can we still work on this displacement? And I think that is a kind of a goal that we should be always keeping this.
It's a real big point, in fact. And also, it's a real big point, not just because people are not so used to this systematic, but also because, in fact, there is something about the movement itself. It's not to be somewhere. It's about to the fact of entering this occupation is something very different than being in an occupation. And I think this is a bit that's a very complicated question, because then at the end you are totally right. In institutional sense, you have to think back to a kind of continuity, and this is a very singular moment, in fact, and that's a big question, very difficult to answer. I think how to think even a kind of continuity of such moment or such a moment.
Our rebirth, like the phoenix rebirth.
It reminds me of this Kluivert's text about it's very funny because he said that he never loved school, and actually the moment of school, the moment of the school in the walking between the home and the school, because he said finally school it's important because it let the children go out of the house, it permits the children to go out. And this movement going to the road to go to the school, this is the moment of meeting with the world, and then you go inside the institution and you are closed in and But this, and so in this his perspective of what school should be, or what it can be, it's really this idea of perpetual movement and perpetual walking, which is linking also with this public space notion. Public space as a place which is not controlled, it's the opposite of the private space, and so opposite of the controlling space. And so for him, in school, there should not be. You don't have to have any evaluation, of course, and also any figure, and the teachers and the students are just walking through the city and moving all the time, and they asking for money in the street to finance them. So this is very funny text, but this idea
of to think the school as an end point of a walk to the school. That's a kind of nice thing, in the sense of
diploma, walked 4 years,
which is a lot. No, but I mean, in the sense, it's really maybe this kind of commonplace, like a school in this sense. As if we still try to think it productive, it's something that can only be realized. It can never be real, so to speak. It can only be something in realization.
Yes.
Always. It's not in the moment when it's sort of existing. It's not existing anymore, so to speak. I think it's an interesting question with these kind of actions, and it's a very concrete question for us now, because now it's a while ago. After we had this Tirana project, which I think was a bit like the next step of this. Yeah. But for me, it's a big question of how to deal with this kind of thing in a way that is. I don't know, that you can never stabilize, but that you can sort of keep being productive. I don't know, or is it maybe not possible? I don't know.
Which tools we use also to build a space together. It could be also, we can find a possible answer in the tools we use to work with, and to allow that these tools could be changed and transformed by the others after. And even in the fixed walls that allow another use of a room, but it not allows to extend the walls or to change the form of the room. So maybe even in the way we use the space and we construct the space, there is some tools to reappropriate those space after.
I'm struggling with sorry, do you want me to continue? I'm struggling with memories, but I want to give it anyway, because even if it's not complete, it's coming from a book written by Whitehead, and he's picking up a part of a poetry, and it's the beginning of it. So it's the four first sentences, and it's not roll, but I would say roll. Roll and roll are rolling over from, but I don't remember from where they are rolling, to decayed, like the bubble in a river, bursting, I don't remember the blasting, borne away. I have to say that I really like also this kind of. I don't want to explain why I want to say. Do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. So maybe one thing we have to conclude. I mean, one very simple conclusion is that the occupation ended at one point. No, but it's as we say, we stay pragmatic.
It was.
Did
it end or did it just
maybe it dropped
disappear?
It was a couple of months of dropping out, I guess, but in a way, for us it ended also because it was layering with the summer. Then
yes,
time.
Yes, and they end too there. I mean, now it's no more. It's also.
So yes. Okay. Maybe that's it, or why not? I just think you want to add in.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's a good last image.
Last image.
I have to say it's layer on layer on layer, you know.